Once the lights go out, some stories don't stay buried. They linger in the dark, waiting to be told. Welcome back, Nightmares and Ghouls. I'm Yashi, and you found my corner of the web where eerie tales come alive as I color. Each story is shared with the author's permission, and you'll find their names and links in the description below. Tonight's tale comes from Reddit user Mr. Barrett98. It's a tale that begins with something innocent, a mother proudly hanging her son's drawings on the fridge. But as the years pass, that simple act twists into obsession filled with grief, madness, and horrors that never should be displayed. What starts as a memory of love becomes a chilling descent into darkness that lingers long after the last page is turned. In the words of the great R.L. Stine, viewer beware, you're in for a scare. When I was a kid, Mom would hang my drawings on the fridge. When I was a teen, Dad would hang my drawings on the fridge, and on the walls, and on the ceiling, and on the windows. One of my first core memories was of Mom excitedly putting one of my drawings from school on the fridge. It was one of those typical stickman family drawings that all kids do at some point, yet despite the mundanity of it, she was ecstatic. If her goal was to give me some sort of confidence, I guess it worked, because I spent the next 12 years drawing almost every day. Every year in art class, the teachers would normally have 2 or 3 projects where they would have you make something for your parents as a gift. Dad was gone most nights, meaning I never got to spend quality time with him, so most, if not all of my projects were specifically made for Mom. I'm not kidding when I say she would put anything I gave her on the fridge. By the time I was 10, there were so many, it got to the point where we ended up running out of space and couldn't find strong enough magnets to keep all the papers from falling off. Want to guess what Mom's solution to this was? That's right, buy another fridge. The new fridge went in the garage and held all of my older drawings, since she wanted to keep my newer stuff on display in the kitchen for everyone to see. I remember being confused about why we needed 2 refrigerators when we could put the old stuff in a box or a drawer. But Dad liked the idea, so I never thought much more of it. Little did I know at the time, he was only okay with it because it meant he had more room to store his beer and hide his snacks he didn't want me eating on. He told me I was banned from using the garage fridge until I turned 19, half joking that it was so I would be old enough to replace any of the beer that I would inevitably drink without his permission. My dad didn't teach me much, but when he did, it stuck. I followed that rule like it was gospel. Whenever I had friends try to convince me to take a couple of his dozens of bottles and cans, I always refused. Even if he wasn't around much, I loved Dad, and I always listened to what he said. He rarely yelled and never hit me, but there was still a threatening aura around him whenever he was upset, and no one, including Mom, would argue with him. Mom always said that Dad knew best, and usually, he did. Life was a breeze if he did exactly as Dad requested. His sports were the only thing I had ever witnessed him truly get angry over. When I was 12, we ended up moving away to a new neighborhood after Dad got into a heated argument with our elderly neighbor beside us. Later that night, I was woken up by Mom to a loud commotion and flashing lights peeking through my curtains. She got me dressed and brought me downstairs, where we sat watching late-night cartoons until Dad came back inside. He told Mom that the old man he was arguing with earlier had died from a heart attack. Mom drove me to my grandparents' house for the night, while Dad stayed behind at the house. That single night turned into a week of no school while my parents found a new place for us to live. They wouldn't tell me why we had to move, but part of me knew it was because of our neighbor. When we got to the new house, I was allowed to pick my own room, so obviously I chose the biggest room, with no confrontation from my parents. In hindsight, I knew it was because they had started sleeping in separate rooms. This didn't concern me much at the time, because they still kissed each other, they still hugged, and they still professed their love for each other every day. I never saw them argue about anything other than what they wanted to get for dinner on the weekends. Eventually, I got used to it and just thought it was a normal thing that all adults did when they get older. I had to change schools when we moved, so I was all alone with no friends in a new place. I didn't take to the change well, so Mom made sure to give me extra attention whenever I got home from school. She never said it outright, but I knew she knew. Things started to get a little bit better after I met this cute girl in my grade. I can't seem to remember her name, but I do remember having the biggest crush on her for a while, but I was too shy to talk to her. One day, we were picking partners for a group assignment. She came up to me on her own accord and asked if I wanted to be her partner. Of course, I said yes. She was my first and only friend in this new place. Our parents became quick friends too, bringing us to each other's houses on the weekends to have barbecues or just to visit. We would run along the creek in the woods behind my house playing Pirate and the Princess, pretending the creek was the sea and that the ground on either side were opposing island kingdoms. She always wanted to play outside, especially by the creek or anywhere with water. During the summer, we went to the beach a lot, where we'd swim until the sun went down, eating campfire hot dogs and marshmallows. In the winter, she taught me how to skate, and the best places to go sledding after a fresh snowfall. I had never been happier, and soon enough, I had forgotten all about my worries. When I was 14, Mom was diagnosed with a degenerative disease. She couldn't work anymore, meaning I wouldn't see Dad awake for very long, for days at a time. Most nights, when he came home, he would help get Mom settled into bed after giving her a bath, then going straight to bed himself. He ended up moving his mattress into her room, right next to her bed. He never wanted to be too far from her. Occasionally, Dad would get sent home early from work, and Mom and I got to spend more time with him on those rare days, even though I could tell he'd rather be in bed. On one of those rare nights, Mom had to keep nudging Dad awake on our first trip back to the movie theater since her diagnosis. Dad and I would spend all of our free time with Mom, especially since she needed help with almost everything nowadays, which meant I also couldn't hang out with my only best friend anymore. When our parents did meet up, it never lasted very long. Mom's social battery depleted a lot faster on those days, not even able to keep her signature smile on for more than a couple of hours before she needed rest. Despite the circumstances, Mom still put all the art I made for her on the fridge. I started drawing a lot more after her diagnosis. In fact, I drew so much that we completely covered the deep freezer, Dad's garage fridge, Mom's bedroom mini fridge, and the kitchen fridge with all my art. I suggested framing the ones that she liked most and hanging them up around the house, but she would just laugh, saying that every inch of wall would be covered in my art if we did that. She didn't want people thinking she went crazy already. The day I turned 16 was the last time my friend came to visit with her parents. We decided to take the trail in my backyard to the creek we used to call the Seven Seas. During the walk, she introduced me to my first joint, and we got stoned by the water. She made me laugh harder than I've laughed in a long time, and life almost felt normal again. When the sun disappeared behind the trees, I gave her my jacket as the cool autumn breeze brought us closer. She laid her head on my shoulder, and when I turned to ask her a dumb question like, "Why do leaves fall?" she shut me up with a kiss. Our foreheads touched, nose to nose, and we giggled incessantly until the moonlight shimmered on the creek. She whispered that she made something for me. She said it was like a lucky charm. It would protect me as long as I kept it on me and thought of her. It was a small crocheted doll dressed as a pirate, with a fancy mustache made of what looked like tufts of my hair. I didn't question her. I just looked into her eyes, and she reassured me everything would be okay, kissing me on the cheek before standing up with my hand in hers. She led me back to my house, where she tried to give me my jacket back, but I said she should keep it and just give it back when I see her next. So she did. Our parents said their goodbyes, and we hugged each other one last time. I could see her sob as she waved goodbye through the rear windshield, and I cried too. It wasn't goodbye forever, but it felt like it. I gave the charm to Mom that night and told her it would protect her. All she needed to do was think of me. The next morning was too quiet. It was a dull, overcast day with a seemingly permanent fog that painted my room in a brackish hue. I shuffled myself towards the kitchen to make food, but then I noticed Dad softly crying in the living room. I changed course for the living room, turning the corner where I could now see he was crying into bloodied hands. Without a second thought, I sprinted to Mom's room, throwing the door open to see her laying peacefully in her bed. I thought I saw someone peeping in through her window from the corner of my eye, so it took me a second to notice Mom's bleeding eyes, bloodied lips, and all the viscera pulling around her head, soaking into the pillow and sheets. At first, I shook her softly, then violently as she continued not to respond. I grabbed the clasped hands sitting on her chest, holding my lips to them as I prayed to a God I didn't know. In her hands was the little pirate charm. I knew she was thinking of me when she died. I didn't get to see the girl for a long time. I kept the pirate on a keychain dangling from my rearview mirror. At some point, I decided I wouldn't rely on luck, so now it was just a reminder of better days that were long behind me. After a few months of investigation, all the wasted trials, they couldn't prove Dad guilty. It didn't feel like a win because he was already broken. He lost his job almost immediately, having to go on government assistance just to keep the lights on. I worked 2 jobs under the table and helped Dad as best I could during his prosecution. I didn't think he killed Mom like everyone else did. The cause of death was bizarre for her condition, and under most circumstances, wouldn't occur naturally. Luckily for us, that wasn't strong enough evidence to convince a jury, especially after they saw the state Dad was in. I would catch him sleepwalking every night, and he was always standing in front of the fridge when I found him. I'd wake him up, and he would tell me he dreamt of Mom, showing him every new drawing she hung on the fridge, before being swept away by water and pulled into a deep sea. Miraculously, I was able to graduate high school, even while working 2 jobs and making sure Dad remembered to eat food in between his bouts of night terrors. A week into college, I came home to find a delivery driver attempting to drop off 3 brand new refrigerators, which I sent back. I asked Dad about it, but he got angry with me for the first time in years, rambling about how Mom would be upset if she doesn't have places to hang my pictures. I stopped drawing when Mom died, but somehow Dad found piles of old drawings that younger me considered not good enough for the fridge. I was more focused on school now and ended up reconnecting with the Princess of the Creek. She said she noticed my pirate hanging in the windshield and wanted to see me again. We go to the same college, so she waited by my car until I was done with class to surprise me. We talked for hours at a coffee shop, catching each other up on our lives. Hers was perfect in comparison, so I wanted to spare her the dirty details of mine. I didn't want to kill the mood when we were talking like we were never apart. Somehow, I do remember her name all of a sudden. It was a whisper of a sound, softly blowing in my ear. A name I couldn't disrespect by butchering it with my dreamer's tongue. I lost track of time, kissing the princess goodbye before taking off back home. While I was gone, Dad had managed to get another delivery of refrigerators set up in the kitchen, even though there was nowhere for them to be plugged in. He already completely filled one fridge with my art and was starting on the second when I caught him. He was mumbling about how Mom will be so happy to see this when she's back from work. I fell to my knees, quietly sobbing as I watched Dad go through 4 rolls of Scotch tape to cover the rest of the fridges. We both slept on the kitchen floor that night. The morning comes fast, and I'm back to my regularly scheduled programming. I struggled to move the fridges to the unused dining room and made breakfast for us both. While I was cleaning up, I noticed even more drawings that I swore weren't there last night. Most were incoherent doodles or just entire pages of black scribbles. I bundled them together and threw them in the garbage while Dad was distracted with his food. After showering myself and getting Dad comfy in the living room with his favorite show and snacks, I left for class. When I got home, every inch of the walls and ceiling were covered with pages I had thrown out that morning. Even the windows were plastered with them, creating varying black and white collages of abstract figures and symbols. I found Dad laying face up in the middle of the living room floor, surrounded in a puddle of his own urine. He was repeating lines from the Bible under his breath, looking up at a collage of hundreds of eyeballs that he taped to the ceiling. He wouldn't say anything to me other than Bible verses and calling out Mom's name. He did seem to hear me, but was incapable of responding or moving a muscle unless instructed to. And even then, I had to guide him with a gentle push in the right direction. For weeks after, my girlfriend would come over to help me with Dad, and it took a lot of stress off of me. She was adamant on not letting me do this alone, so I couldn't stop her even if I tried. She would sleep over most nights. Even her parents would come to see Dad. We hoped it might jog his memory to reconnect with old friends, but all it did was make him cry out for Mom even more than he already was. I read somewhere that cats can be great therapy animals, so when a pregnant stray kept scratching at our back door for scraps of food my girlfriend had been sneaking her, I suggested we just adopt her. She gave birth to the cutest litter of kittens I'd ever seen, and Mama Cat really seemed to take a liking to Dad. She would sit in his lap and purr endlessly when she wasn't in mom mode. When they got big enough, we showed the babies to Dad, and for the first time in a long time, his eyes lit up. He even leaned over to give Mama Cat a kiss on the top of her head and said how proud he was of her. It was beautiful, but a fleeting moment of clarity for him. Later that night, we were startled awake to what sounded like a generator being ran downstairs, quickly followed by several distinct shots of what I knew to be Dad's nail gun. We looked at each other panicked and bolted downstairs towards the kitchen. My girlfriend screamed as she noticed the splattering of blood on the bottom step. Standing awkwardly in the kitchen next to an air compressor, nail gun in hand, was Dad. He was admiring the fridge he'd managed to drag in from the garage, which he had nailed the baby kittens to, miscellaneous pieces of Mama Cat included. He turned to us, with a genuine smile on his face, and said as calm as the creek,
"Ran out of tape, kiddo. Sorry if I woke you. Mom's gonna be so happy when she sees what we made for her."
I'm 25 now. We have a son of our own who's turning 3 this autumn. He only got to see Dad a couple of times before he took his own life by gouging his eyes out at the hospital. At least, that's what they told me. Doctor said something along the lines of he couldn't stomach the guilt of his sins any longer, or some bullshit I don't care to remember. Now, I'm just focusing on my career, my writing, and my princess turned queen who gave me the prince of my dreams. A legacy we can nurture together with our love. Something I couldn't have, something he deserves. I even started carrying the pirate charm again. Something I used to think was just silly kid stuff now means more to me than I could have ever imagined. I secretly learned to crochet and some other neat tricks to surprise my wife with a matching princess for her pirate, complete with real hair that I snuck off the floor from when she butchered her haircut last week. She loved it, carrying it with her everywhere she went. For the most part, life has finally settled down, a bright future starting. Last night, my wife found me sleepwalking again. The only thing I remember is dreaming of crashing waves pulling me further into the deep as thousands of eyes stared back up at me. When she woke me up, I was standing in front of the fridge. And so, the fridge, once a place for love and pride, became a gallery of grief and madness. Some drawings were never meant to be seen, and some memories were never meant to be preserved. Thank you for walking through the darkness with me tonight, Nightmares. If you enjoyed this week's episode, let me know in the comments. And if you have a story of your own you want to be considered for narration by me, my Discord is waiting, linked below. Also, please don't forget to check out tonight's author, Mr. Barrett98, and his Reddit profile linked below, and thank him for his chilling imagination that brought the story to life. Until next time, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and above all, stay spooky.